Karen and I were invited by some friends to join them in Hawaii on Maui this past February. I'd never been, and I was so excited that I was going to get to see clear blue water for the first time. We saw all kinds of amazing sights, and we spent more than a few days in downtown Lahaina. We walked under a banyan tree that spanned a city block. We had a delightful meal in a hole-in-the-wall restaurant. We oohed and awed over Maui's history and the courthouse on the square. Lahaina, the town that burned down this week. Disasters hit home a little deeper when you've been there. I still watch the storms heading for Chattanooga, Tennessee, because I lived there for 2 years, and I know how they'll be slipping and sliding when a little bit of snow falls. But this one, Lahaina, the natives say Lahaina, it hit so much deeper. It's unfathomable that a tropical island should be destroyed by a forest fire. California, maybe, but Hawaii? It's just one more reminder that the world that we grew up in is not the one we're passing on to our children or our grandchildren. When was the moment? When was the moment that you realized that everything is changing? When did you figure out that those climate tipping points they're talking about are going to be going? That we are unlikely to pull off an 11th hour miracle, no matter how much we recycle, no matter how much we compost. If you're not there yet, I understand denial is a way to live in this world. But I would also invite you to watch the PBS series called Weathered. They're just 30-minute sections, and they're talking about the consequences of our ongoing climate change, and they're all on YouTube, so you can find them there. And they present science-based information without a lot of hype. It's even low-key, kind of. I think that's what makes them so potent. They're not trying to scare people into changing. It's too late. They're just talking about how we might adjust to the changes ahead. Is this a place that we can be real together? Can we talk about things that most people in America are not yet saying out loud? I suspect that all of the unrest all around the globe, the rise of fascism, the extreme efforts of people to restrict the teaching of science and unpopular history, are all part of a deep denial of our current reality. I think even the most ardent climate change denier knows somewhere in their body that the gig is up. But rather than face such a terrifying fact, they're going to keep digging in and displacing all that anger, all that justifiable anger, onto somebody else, onto immigrants, onto wokeism, onto inconvenient historical facts. And it's kind of normal, isn't it? It's human to shy away from things that seem too big or beyond our control. We want to believe we still have control, even if it's not true. But we all know that some folks have been speaking these truths aloud for a very long time. Back in 2017, I joined Margaret Wheatley for a Warriors of the Human Spirit training out in Crestone, Colorado. Wheatley had had her climate crisis realization in the early 2000s, and in response, she formed a network of people that she hoped would act as warriors ready to support humanity as things fell apart. She based it on the work of teachings of Chogyam Trungpa, Pema Chodron, and Joanna Macy. It was a powerful week for me, all of the training. So on the first day, Wheatley talked about her realizations, and the woman right in front of me suddenly just started sobbing. And she sobbed, and she sobbed, and she sobbed all the way through the talk. And afterwards, a bunch of us that were close, gathered around and put our arms around her. And we bore witness to that pain that she was feeling. After finally calming down, she shared that she had had this growing anxiety in her chest for a very long time, but it felt like she was feeling it all by herself, that no one else was paying attention. Nobody else around her was freaking out when she would read these articles about what was coming. I knew that feeling. I don't know how many times I've read an article in the paper and go, ah, why aren't we screaming and running in the streets? But no, we're just going to keep going to whatever we're doing. Being in that place where people saw what I saw and didn't deny reality gave everyone there the space to vent the deep grief burning in our hearts. We all cried. We all felt intimately connected. Joanna Macy says that speaking the truth of our anguish for the world brings down the walls between us, drawing us into deep solidarity. And that solidarity is all the more real with the uncertainty that we face. That experience changed me, and I'm still in contact with some of the warrior folks. But ultimately, I realized that I didn't need a network spread across the country. What I needed was to go deeper into the community that I had locally, into the people that are around me. It was 2017, so we weren't yet breathing smoke that had come down from Canadian wildfires. We weren't hearing about ocean temperatures that were hitting 100 near Florida, or learning that the AMOC current was about slowing down and might stop soon. The world still felt normal in 2017. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that Margaret Wheatley's program was right, and it gave me a place to feel alive, a place to speak things that were real. It gave me a ground from which I could live with integrity. This seems like a thing that our churches should be helping us do more. But most of the congregations that I know are still more about maintaining a status quo. And it's not working out really well. A recent Gallup poll reported that only 37% of Americans trust organized religion, and that I think of as 2020 was the first year that attendance at church fell below 50% for Americans. Psychologists tell us that our country is in a crisis of isolation and depression and loneliness. Doesn't it seem that church should be the cure? It does to me, but I'm 61. I'm not Gen X or Y or Z or any of the young people coming up. When the pandemic hit, Karen and I followed the promptings of Spirit, and we moved out to Bull Valley, just outside of Woodstock in Illinois. We went out there for trees and for stars and from a respite from the noise of traffic. But at some deeper level, I also went looking for a real community, the kind that I'd experienced growing up and raising my children. I wanted to be in a place where I knew my neighbors and where the community leaders were human beings who lived right up the street. I was looking for that bar from Cheers where everybody knows your name. In my heart of hearts, I think that's what we all long for. But I'm going to continue being real here and admit the church, our Unitarian Universalist faith, doesn't always feel like that for me anymore. Sometimes it feels like a place where I'm constantly being told I'm not good enough. That's what other religions do, not Unitarian Universalist. I know our heart is in the right place. And as we've learned about institutional racism, about the way whiteness has denigrated people with darker skin in order to feel superior, my heart has been broken wide open. It isn't fair, it isn't good, and it isn't how I want to live my life. And I'm glad that I'm no longer living in comfortable ignorance, participating unconsciously in ways that do harm to other people. And I know now that I have an ingrained unconscious bias that's going to always color the way I see the world. And so I have lots of avenues now to explore and ways to open up things that I couldn't see before. And I think all of that is very, very good. And on top of that, I know that Black and brown-skinned people are going to be are already bearing the brunt of the worst parts of climate change. Despite our best efforts to make it so, life is not going to be fair. But, and there is a but, I think we've only gotten half the story. I think we've gotten the part where we realize that people with white skin are contributing to an unequal and unjust society, but I don't think we've dug in quite deep enough. We've made the story about our failures rather than about the bigger failure of our capitalist system itself. We made it be afraid of offending someone instead of radically rethinking our relationship to wealth, to power, to consumerism, to all of the things that are actually important to life, or maybe not. No, I've been hearing this term late-stage capitalism a lot lately. Has anybody heard it? It describes the bizarre excesses that we've come to be seen as normal at this part of the capitalism cycle. It's where everything has been commodified. Even, think about on the internet, people being paid to whisper weird things online. Just odd crap. But it seems kind of normal because everything, we should be able to collect money for everything in our capitalist society. That's what it's about. It's about getting money. If you have something to offer to somebody, never give it away. Find some way to monetize it, to make money out of it, because that's what it means to be human in America these days. Late stage capitalism is that widening of the inequality between the haves and the have-nots. And it's the use of the bottom line to defend so many amoral and unconscionable acts. Our culture tells us that money is the be-all and end-all of life, but it's wrong. Do we say this out loud in our churches often enough? Or are we afraid some of our bigger donors might get offended? I think as Unitarian Universalists, we tried to talk out of both sides of our mouths, pointing to the evils of discrimination, while still supporting that very system which makes that discrimination necessary. We pride ourselves on our ability to think outside the box, and yet we still unconsciously want all the good stuff that capitalism promises us. I know I've wanted a comfortable house, the status of nice clothes, a good car to drive. I've grown up in that system, and it's hard to see how big the lies that it tells me really are. But I think that's what our churches are supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be naming those lies. We're supposed to be naming and saying that is not the deeper truth of who we are as human beings. That's what Jesus and his original followers did, isn't it? They radically rejected the promise of empire and continued to live in a community and support one another, each taking what they needed, each giving everything they could. We're not quite there yet. My experience is that Unitarian Universalists like to think we're different, but we keep up with the Joneses, and we hold up people that have wealth as they must be smarter in some way. We're kind of mainstream, besides our focus on anti-racism work, besides the fact that we like to wear tie-dye to church, or we were driving Priuses a long time ago. But how can our communities now, in this time, offer a radically different vision of what it means to be human? Can we affirm that it's not only about feeling the pain of growth and realizing all the uncomfortable things we've realized, but it's also in grasping the joy of living with one another? Because it's both, it's all of it. The fullness of being human contains all of those contradictions. And if we look around, we can see other people who have figured this out. My daughter and her husband are Jewish. They belong to a vibrant community of young people. And it seems that they're always celebrating some festivals, some holy day, at least once a month, maybe more. Purim, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. They're gathering, they're taking little gifts to each other. They're remembering the joys and the sorrows of life. They're dancing. Jewish folks have a long tradition of finding joy in the midst of trials and tribulations because they had to. When you're suffering, you have to let go of all that stuff, all that baloney that people tell you is important, and you have to really sort through what is real, what matters. African Americans often have this innate ability to find joy in the midst of the hardships imposed on them by a racist society. And then white people try to steal that joy by taking their music and taking their poetry and taking all the things that rise up alive. Oh, we want that. We just don't want to be suffering to get that. And then don't get me started talking about the Irish. There's some miserable people that know how to party. My wife's Irish. I could say that. The core of my critique of Unitarian Universalist faith right now is that it judges the good life by the wrong values. Do you have stuff? Then you're successful. Do you not have stuff? Maybe not so much. All of that is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We've set a task of making white people feel bad for their material success they have, for the comfort and affluence they've worked hard for, without pointing out how much it has cost. How much humanity has been taken away in our bowing to the almighty dollar. I saw an Instagram video with one of those split screens. I don't know if you're, so it has one woman, a white woman, talking about a conversation she had with a daughter, and then a black woman on the other screen watching and reacting. And the mom is saying, asking her daughter that she just learned about the story of Ruby Bridges in school that day. And the mom said, "Did that make you feel bad about being white?" And the little girl said, "No, it just made me feel really sad for the little girl. And it made me feel like nobody should have to live like that." And the black woman is nodding. It's not about guilt. It's about empathy. It's about imagination. It's about understanding that we're connected on so many different levels. White people don't have to feel bad about institutional racism that we live within. We just have to recognize our own humanity and look for ways to resist it every place we can. We have to act always from places of humility, from places of love, from places of compassion and kindness. And sometimes we might feel bad, and that's okay. More importantly, we might notice that capitalism, that having wealth, is not the measurement that we should be using in determining a good life. Joanna Macy wrote, "The most radical thing any of us could do at this time is to be fully present to what is happening in our world." Fully present. Not looking away, not finding somebody to distract us, not finding somebody else to be angry with, looking at how we live our lives. Are we paying attention? The oceans are heating up, the land is burning. Now we can wait. We can wait until something happens very close to home that makes our backyard look like the hellscape that is today Lahaina. Or we can wake up to this reality that has been obscured, to see that we are all connected and that we must love in mutually supporting life if any humanity is going to survive. What if our churches offered a space to leave behind all of the trappings of late-stage capitalism? What if we stopped trying to fit into the normal American ideals, embrace the fullness of living in right relationship? Not because it's going to save the planet, no, but because it's the only way to save ourselves. It's the only way to live who we are in this place, in this time, and find out what is still joyful about being human. What if that is what we had to offer the world? Macy said, "What disintegrates in periods of rapid transformation is not the self, but its defenses and assumptions. Self-protection restricts vision and movement like a suit of armor, making it harder to adapt. But going to pieces, however uncomfortable, can open us up to new perceptions, new data, new responses. Creating a space in our pews for people to feel radically supported in the coming years might mean changing as radically inside as the world is changing outside. Maybe the carpets are going to get dirty. Maybe the flower beds will be trampled. Maybe we will feel connection with all those people in our lives who we've maybe secretly believed that we're better than. Why church? To remember solidarity, connection, being seen, knowing each and every one of us matters. Isn't that what any of us in our heart of hearts really wants? I really don't have answers today, but I do know that the world is burning and that all of us are going to be in a world of hurt as this climate crisis continues. This beautiful summer morning where you can barely see the haze from the fires burning in Canada, we can continue on as if nothing's changing. Or we could begin to question the lies that our capitalist society has sold us and figure out what is real and true and what connects us as humans one to another. The people in Lahaina have no choice. They have to vision a new reality into being. But we do have a choice right now. We can choose. And what kind of reality will we build if we face the future, if we face what is real, no matter what it might bring, together?
Visit us at uusg.org.